Now, last week in Family Matters, we were talking about the importance of unstructured play and how essential it is in helping kids to unlock key developmental steps and skills. And one of the things our guest mentioned during that interview was that self-directed, imaginative play helps kids to develop not just their fine motor and sensory skills, but also emotional skills, social skills, the building of empathy, the ability to learn things like how to wait and take turns, and the ability to self-regulate, to manage their own emotions. And I want to pick up on that emotional theme today. Joining me on the line is Adila Rahiman, who is a licensed counsellor and play therapist whose practice is based in Kenwyn. And she shares many of our previous guests' concerns about the impact of the very fast-paced, heavily scheduled world in which our children and we ourselves operate today. And she really has a great passion for helping children to build the emotional skills they are going to need to be able to navigate it. It's with this in mind that she recently published a very simple children's book which helps younger readers to identify and name and then manage their big feelings. It's called Blooming Buds in My Garden, and it uses the metaphor of a garden to help children get to know the big feelings in a way. Adila, it's great to have you joining us on the show this afternoon. Thank you for your time and welcome to CapeTalk.
Hi, Pippa. Thanks for having me.
It's a great pleasure. What made you want to write about this question of managing big feelings? Is it from a place of being worried about children? We're hearing a lot of experts saying so many of our kids are socially disconnected. They can't even name what they are feeling, let alone manage what they're feeling. Do you share that worry?
Yeah, 100%. I've seen firsthand in the practice how challenging it's for these little ones to navigate their big emotions, and in conjunction with that, their parents to manage them navigate these big emotions. And when the parents can't assist them, they can't co-regulate with the child, which leads to more challenges.
Yeah.
And it's quite simple. But we tend to shut down feelings like don't cry and don't be so silly and why you're so sad, instead of validating, allowing them to feel the physiological responses of the emotions, and then asking questions about how can we support you as a child through this emotion, instead of numbing or dissociating or suppressing it. Yeah.
And it's so important. I bet everybody listening to this interview can think back to childhood and remember a time where something, for example, terrified them. They probably had a completely irrational fear of the monster under the bed or a particular environment, whether it was thunder or lightning, whatever it is, that they felt complete fear for, and being told by an adult, that's a silly thing to be afraid of, don't worry about it. And Adila, that response, as you say, that's shutting down rather than validating the feeling, and it doesn't offer any kind of practical steps for managing the feeling. So I love what you're saying about actually this might be a book for children, but it's also a book for the adults to help them recognize emotion.
And that's why at the end of the book, I included a parent, caregiver, and educator section that teaches strategies for facilitating socio-emotional development through the feelings garden metaphor. So not only does it help you reading it to your child, but helping you as an adult or as a parent, caregiver, or teacher, help them through this emotion, what you can do in terms of supportive communicative environment and using multisensory stimuli, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Maybe before we do anything else, Adila, I should ask you just to tell us a little bit more about the metaphor of the garden and explain to our listeners briefly some of the things you've touched on in this book.
Okay. So I used a visual metaphor in terms of a garden to detach from the actual feeling within the child. So they sort of view it from a different lens, from the outside looking in. All children can relate to colors and all of them can relate to flowers. So I use a different feeling for each flower. So an example, the yellow flowers are emotional responses of joy, blue for sadness, etc. And it's a tangible way for them to visualize, to process, and to see a garden through the garden metaphor, and to see how their emotions look and feel like, and learn simple names for the emotions, and which increases emotional vocabulary, literacy, and general coping as well. Yeah, so it's a book rooted in therapeutic principle, but in a fun way. It's non-clinical at all. It encourages exploration rather than instruction. And there's a little cat pet that's in the book with the children, exploring as well, for them to understand that, pets have feelings too, and it's not only me that can feel like this. And the cat it's like a supportive animal that wanders through the garden with these kids as they experience each feeling and each flower related to that feeling.
Yeah. I want to just, if I may, share with listeners an example. So the text that goes with the emotion of anger, the red flower, the fiery stomping buds of anger that the character encounters, there is an explanation of how you feel. So when you feel angry, your face might feel warm, your hands might clench, it might make you feel like stomping your feet. And then immediately followed by, these are some of the things you can do when you feel that way. Taking deep breaths, squeezing a soft toy or pillow, drawing or scribbling your anger. And I love the comment at the end. Remember, it's okay to be angry. It's not okay to hurt anyone. And Adila, I want us to talk particularly about anger management, because it's the one already I've had two listeners asking for comment on managing this particular emotion, because it is one that is often associated with hurting other people when we don't manage to manage it. Alice, for example, saying, please ask your guest whether this book is applicable to kids with ADHD. Often they tend to have a lot more anger management issues. Not just them. I can think of a lot of adults I know who have anger management issues as well, Adila. I think there are lots of them in this country. Let's talk a little bit about that. How do you teach a very young child to manage an emotion like that really can make it feel like it's taking over your body?
Yeah. So ironically, anger is one of the main focuses or main areas that parents come into for children, because and you know what, it leads to bullies and all sorts of things if it's not managed at an early age, and it's so simple to do. So I'll give you some examples of what I do at the practice besides reading. Bibliotherapy is what we call it. We create a little anger thermometer, and they can gauge where they are on the anger thermometer. We create a feelings wheel. There's different techniques in terms of stimuli, so visual, tactile, all sensory stimuli. There's breathing techniques we teach them. There's a glitter calm down jar that we make together. So I try to empower these kids to actually create strategies and coping techniques in the room with me that they can take home, that they can utilize at home. But from a book perspective, we teach that all feelings are okay, not just anger. All feelings are valid, but all behaviors are not. And so you're okay, you're good to feel your feeling, but what you do with the anger and what you do with the frustration is not always healthy. Yeah. And these are the healthy alternatives to that.
And I love the idea of just the ability of teaching a child to recognize that is what they are feeling, because Adila, so often that lashing out response, the antisocial behavior, the kinds of things that are not acceptable in response, comes from a place of just feeling completely overwhelmed. It's not a place of logic and rational thought and being able to look at yourself and say, hey, I can feel these signs. I know that I'm getting angry. I need to be mindful of how I respond. I love the fact that you're talking about things like a thermometer to help them look and say, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm feeling. I'm feeling bright orange, volcano, fiery right now. And then have a conversation about, okay, well, what can we do to bring you down to yellow and then hopefully green and blue? Something as simple as that. It might seem like a simple thing to do, but talk to us about what you are teaching the child in giving them a tool like that.
So what it teaches them is, firstly, physiologically, that's our first response to feeling an emotion. So often we get our emotions mixed up. So we get like a fluttering in our tummy, and then they think it's nervousness or anxiety, but it could be other emotions as well. And this is why in the book I speak about the physiological responses of certain emotions, where they feel in your body, how your head will feel, how your cheeks will feel, how your hands will feel. So they can notice these responses in their body and then pinpoint, oh, it could be this or it could be that, instead of just naming an emotion randomly and not knowing exactly what this feels like. And then the emotions wheel as well teaches them that there's more than one emotion. So the 4 basic emotions is anger, happiness, sadness, and madness. That's the 4 primary emotions that kids know. But there's so many others. There's anxiety, there's overwhelm, there's frustration, there's nervousness that all apply to primary school kids. So when they can pinpoint exactly that it's not anger, maybe I'm just overwhelmed, then we know exactly how to regulate that emotion instead of just going in blindly or suppressing it and saying, oh, you're a bit nervous for nonsense, it's okay, move on, Rather come down to the child's level, feel the emotion with them, co-regulate, pick up a coping technique that works for that specific emotion, and then move on from that, right? Because when we don't teach them to regulate, they build on, and they blow up at some stage. And this is when we have bullying and fights in school, because they don't know how to manage their own emotions. They're too little. It's not taught in school. They're too little to understand it. But when they do understand it, it's so empowering for them. It's like light bulbs go off, like, oh, that's what I was feeling, and this is what I can do about it. And teaching them all these coping techniques and visual tools allows them to take power over the emotion. So I have power over how I feel. So I'm feeling a 1 on the scale, or I'm feeling a 5, and next to that character emoji of blowing up is what responses I'm feeling within my body, and attached to that, these are possible things I can do when I'm feeling this way. Yeah, so I tell parents to stick it on the fridge or stick it in an area that's quite visible for them, so they are empowered to go there themselves and say, I think I'm here and this is what I can do. And for the little ones, instead of having words, I have pictures. So like someone blowing out a candle or squeezing a stress ball, because they can't read, but they can pick up on the visual cues.
Yeah. I just want to say, for the sake of anybody who might have come into this interview midway, our guest joining us on the line is Adila Rahiman, who is a licensed counsellor and play therapist practicing out of Kenwyn, and is the author of a new book called Blooming Buds in My Garden. It's a small, simple, but very effective children's book aimed at helping children to recognize and name the big emotions and to think about strategies for dealing with them when they are feeling consumed by those emotions. I wonder what you think of Rachel's technique. Rachel writes in on the WhatsApp line that when my preteen needs an outlet for her anger or frustration, I take her outside, we choose a big stick, and she can hit the ground or a tree trunk and scream if she needs to. Is that kind of physical expression of anger a good practical step?
That's phenomenal. That's amazing. One of the techniques in my book for anger is scream or yell into a pillow, because sometimes we just need to vent and get that anger out, but hitting somebody else or abusing a pet is a no-no. Yeah. And also, physical responses to any living thing, that's what we teach them. But hitting the grass is fine, or like hitting, squeezing a stress ball to get that frustration out, stomping your feet, wide movements, swinging your arm from side to side, that kind of thing all expels the pent-up emotion and the anger.
Adila, we've spoken a lot about anger, but I also want to touch on sadness, because it's the one emotion that many parents try to shield their children from. Of course, we want our children not to be sad, but I often think we do them a disservice if we don't allow them to see us experiencing sadness and sitting in it and dealing with it. And that, it's part of life that everybody is going to face at some point. Do you want to talk a little bit about how we help children to learn to master or manage the feeling of sadness?
So growing up, I know we were always taught, boys don't cry, or why are you crying? And this builds a negative connotation to that emotion of crying. But what we don't realize, that crying is so essential to help us as humans, not just children, as humans, to regulate. It spills cortisol from our tears, and you're literally spilling out the hormones that makes you feel blue. which is the color that I attached to sadness in my book. There's multiple ways. So the first thing I always tell the children is talk to a grown-up about how you feel. They will listen. They can give you a warm hug, and sometimes they feel that, grown-ups don't get when they're sad, and sometimes they don't, but we just have to be empathetic and listen to these children, because often they feel so dismissed that their feelings are not valid, and they carry on through the motions of life feeling all these emotions without having an outlet. Also, to let them sit with their feelings. So sit quietly, let your feelings flow, your sadness flow like gentle raindrops through your body. Think about what's making you sad, and let's think about ways that we can make you feel better. So we're not suppressing, we're not minimizing, we're feeling our emotions, and then we move on. So it's like a wave, we feel it. I always tell them you like a surfer. You ride the wave and you come back to shore. And when you feel all upside down again, you ride the wave, whatever emotion the wave is, and you come back to shore. But you always come back to shore. But you need to ride the wave, otherwise you're going to drown. And then the other thing is they can draw pictures of how they're feeling. One of the tools I use in the practice is we use Play-Doh. And because they can't draw a lot of the little ones, so we create a feeling face with the Play-Doh on a play mat. So actually tactile, rolling the Play-Doh, making a mouth, making the eyes, making eyelashes, making whatever you want, and then explaining what that actual Play-Doh face means for you. It might not mean sadness to me. It might look completely off, but it has meaning for you. And that's a way for them to externalize the emotion and actually see it and work through it through there.
I'm loving another strategy that's come in from Ali, who tells us a friend would throw ice blocks at the outside wall to release her anger. As long as nobody's walking in between to get hit by a roaming ice block, it's a lot more constructive than throwing the glass the ice was in, which is what many adults would result to, Ali. So I like that one. Adila, we're almost out of time, and several people asking how they access this book and how to find out more if they want to bring a child to see you. What's the best way to do that?
So I've got a website. They're welcome to visit the website. All my details is on the website. It's bloomtherapy.co.za. The book is available online via Amazon Kindle. I do have hard copies available at my practice, or I can courier as well. And then my phone number is 069-917-1293. I have an Instagram page as well dedicated specifically to play therapy and to children. It's Bloom_counseling_play therapy, one word.
Bloom_counseling_play therapy on Instagram, which is, I know, where a lot of our listeners are. So thank you so much for that. Adila, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon to talk about this really important subject.
Thanks for having me.
It's my great pleasure. Adila Rahiman, thank you so much for joining us. Bloomtherapy.co.za is the website for more information.